It's 7:15. This is the way it is on Morning Express. With only 23 days to go before the repeat presidential election, no consensus has been reached between the two antagonists, Jubilee and NASA. One side is pushing for IEBC officials to vacate office, while the other is pushing for the electoral laws amendments. Who will carry the day, and what will be the impact of the outcome for the credibility of the election process? In studio, I have a super panel of lawyers. We have Ambrose Weda, Alex Gatundu, and Alutalala Muhwana, Dr. Alutalala Muhwana, to drive this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. And I'll start with your opening remarks. And before we do that, maybe just so that we are clear, would like to try and just look at the laws in their own merit, not necessarily from a Jubilee perspective or a NASA perspective. We are, as a country, only have a few days before we get to the presidential election, and we have these amendments introduced. Now, Jubilee has said that this is to make sure they're answering to the full text of the judgment. NASA have said these are taking us back, but we'd like to just look at the laws. Let me start with you, Dr. Muhwana, on your general perspective of the laws and how they benefit Kenya.
Morning, Michael. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to share these with our viewers. In my view, the amendments cut both sides. They have some sections that mean well and they're progressive, and they also have some sides in them which pose challenges, particularly when you compare the short-term goals and the future goals. Thank you.
All right.
I think the laws as proposed to be amended are progressive. They are meant for posterity, and they'll also cure the ills that were pointed out in the majority judgment. And as far as I'm concerned, this is what we need to do as a country. And remember, we are at the public participation stage in the lawmaking process. So whatever shortcomings Dr. is talking about, they'll be taken care of through memos.
Potentially, they can be taken care of.
Yeah, of course, of course. There is that window of amendments of the amendments at this stage through public participation. So you just need to write a memorandum to the Legal Affairs Committee, which is ad hoc, and it will take on board all those contributions.
All right.
Up to fifth. Up to fifth.
Up to fifth.
Yes, I think the goodness in any law would depend on the timing. However good the proposed laws may be, the timing is fairly wrong, and it is taking a toll in the country. It is a kind of law that requires a bipartisan approach. Otherwise, it looks like it is favoring one side, and it takes a deep toll on the country that requires us to take a break and look at where we are going.
But in your opinion, are the laws good or are they bad?
Some of them are good. Some of them, I don't understand where they came from.
Okay, so generally speaking, I think we have almost an agreement here that some of the laws are good, others are bad. So we'd like to find out what are those good laws and what are those bad laws. However, we cannot separate these from the politicians because there is what they say, and maybe what they say is a benefit to them. Now, let's listen to what the real players in the repeat presidential election have to say about the contentious electoral laws amendments bill.
You can pass that law in Parliament, but that law will not pass through the court of the people, the court of public opinion.
We are ready for an election, and we will go to these elections, but the playing field must be leveled. And you don't level the playing field by placing additional obstacles on the way, which is what Jubilee is trying to do. You have said that the bill that they introduced in Parliament yesterday is an act of extreme provocation to us as NASA, and it's something that is completely unacceptable. But beyond that, we have our irreducible minimum conditions, which we gave to the IEBC, which they still have to respond to.
Wale ambao walisikiza kesi, walisikia majaji wakisema ya kwamba kuna returning officer na presiding officer wengine ambao hawakuweka kidole katika hizo forms. Kweli ama sio kweli? Sasa jameni, tukienda sasa tuseme tuwabadilisha sheria ya kwamba wewe kama returning officer, wewe kama presiding officer, ukikataa kuweka sahihi, ukibadilisha form, uko na hatia kisheria na utafungwa. Makosa iko wapi jameni? Jameni, tumefanya nini ya kufanya makosa? Tukienda sasa kwa sheria kusema ya kwamba ile results ambaye itakuwa ya mwisho ni ile results ambaye mutatangaza katika hapa Matayos polling station, na hiyo results iletwe mpaka Nairobi ikiwa na sahihi ya returning officer, na hiyo ndio itakuwa final. Tumefanya makosa jameni, si tunafanya tu vile yeye alikuwa anataka.
All right. Now, just a quick reminder, you're welcome to participate in this conversation. The Twitter handles are going to be displayed as we carry on. Also, the phone lines will be open so that you can also participate. Now, we've heard what the politicians have to say. Let me start with you, Dr. Mukhwana, and kindly, in very simple language, what does this amendment bill seek to address?
Thank you, Michael. First of all, you said we don't need to talk about politicians, but they have talked about the law. I think looking at what the president is saying, he's playing politics for two reasons. Number one, what he says that now they are addressing the issue of the returning officer and the presiding officer not signing the forms, and therefore that is what this bill seeks to put in place. It is yes, but it need not be the way they have put it, because this law was already there. The difference is that the existing law which they are proposing to change provided for 3 years or a fine of 1 million shillings or both. What the present amendment seems to suggest is 5 years. Initially, there was a suggestion from the first which you saw, but that seems to have disappeared, that without option of bail, but now that is not there. So they are proposing 5 years. So as to whether 1 million plus 3 years on one side and 5 years jail term, if 5-year jail term will be a better deterrent, that is for another day. So there was a law ready. And it may not have mentioned specific returning officers and presiding officers, but it said where an officer or any official. So in that case, that law was there. But as I've said, politicians will always cling on one thing and use it for their own. Number two, the issue of saying that the presiding officers' results are going to be the ones announced, it is neither here nor there given the amendment. The amendment says the results shall be tallied, yes, manually and electronically, transmitted from the polling center to the CTC, that's Constituent Tallying Center, and to the NTC. But somewhere within the bill, they are saying that the results that are transmitted from the polling center to the CTC will be tallied and verified. Now, that therefore would mean, although it's not coming out very clearly, that the results from the polling center may not necessarily be final if they have to be tallied and verified. Okay. So as far as tallying and verification is concerned, that is what the law seeks to do.
For me, I'm very proud of the amendments as proposed. In fact, they go the whole way towards curing the ills that were pointed out by the Supreme Court, as I indicated at the intro. And if you look at the amendment as proposed in terms of the punitive aspect of in the event that the two officials, that is the returning officer or the presiding officer, fail or refuse or neglect to sign the forms, the results forms, that is very encouraging because they have removed the aspect of option of fine. So now, if you are found guilty, if you are convicted of an offense of not signing a resource form, for example, that 4B, as generated by the constituency returning officer, then you have to go in without any option of fine. That's the deterrent.
So it's meant to act as a deterrent.
Exactly. And also, remember, this is what NASA was saying, was complaining. And this is what the court was able to bring out in their majority judgment. So if that is going to cure that problem, everyone should be applauding that particular proposal to amend and remove the aspect of option of fine. Yes.
Okay, let me come to you back, Dr. Mukhwana. Is there a problem if the returning officer, or rather, to amend that, have a stiff penalty which acts as a deterrent so that that does not happen again? Because that's one of the things that brought ambiguity to the Form 34Bs.
Michael, there's no problem. That's why I said, if on one hand, what is existing is 3 years or 1 million shillings fine, or both. That means the court has the option of actually giving 3 years and 1 million shillings fine. What is being proposed now here is mandatory 5 years. So what I said is, I'm not sure whether the first one was not deterrent enough. And Michael, as I said before...
Could we base the judgment, the full text judgment, and that advises us that possibly it was not a deterrent, because we do have some officers who did not sign?
Precisely, and that's what I was going to say, that in this country, there is no shortage of laws, Michael. The problem is that we don't have men and women of integrity who are dealing with these processes. So for me, whether this is a deterrent enough is neither here nor there, because even where systems have been said to have failed, it's not that the systems have failed, but they've been made to fail. So for me, this particular change from 3 years, 1 million shillings fine, to 5 years is neither here nor there. The problem that has to be addressed is the issue of character, morality, and the fidelity to the law. People have to understand that once you've been given a job, please do it. Be faithful to the Constitution and be faithful to the country.
All right. Ambrose Sweda, the laws are there to ensure that those who possibly do not follow things as supposed to are pay for it, or at least there's some punitive action that's taken for them to pay for it. Do you think then that this particular amendment is dealing with that?
I think the nuisance value of the amendment is too dire. The 3 years is long enough. What we needed at this time, today, was to arrest those who did not sign forms, charge them, and let them feel the heat. It is not because they failed to sign, because it was only 3 years and 1. It is because we have not gotten hold of them and lock them in and charge them and prosecute them, and so that others, as we go back for elections, they see. If now we are going to put Kitonga there, and you have seen your colleague who did not sign in court in Kibera, it does not matter whether it is a week or a day. It would be like, I saw it, I will do my part. But the nuisance value, now it gives NASA something to cling on, something to spread propaganda on, that, oh, you see, now they are changing laws to favor them. The law that I don't understand where it came from and is strange is we seem to be receding back to manual transmission. We seem to be giving it more prominence. We seem to be forgetting the 207, where those manual papers were changed and it led the country to war. This time, we still maintain that the Supreme Court itself, the majority decision, was wrong. It was not that what happened was so wrong. So by sanitizing it and going back to manual transmission, where the same returning officers will print forms in River Road and bring it. And then the rest, they say, let's deal with it in court. Let people be charged and let's do it. By that time, we're already fighting. So that part, I really do not.
That's the part you don't understand.
And I know that's the part that Honorable Island's team will cling on, to say, we are not going for elections if this thing is going to be manual. And then they're going to tell people, you want 207? And Kenyans will be so afraid. They're already so afraid. Just because they remember 207 and manual transmission.
Right. I disagree, Arnold. I totally disagree with Mr. Wenda. He is trying to suggest that the amendments are in any way trying to take away the aspect or the importance or the need of the electronic aspect of transmission. That is far from the truth. The truth of the matter is, what the amendments seem to cure is this. In the event, in the unlikely, unfortunate event that there's failure of transmission, for whatever reason,
manipulation.
Yes, for whatever reason, then what you do, you go back to the results as they are. For example, you do a manual transmission, for example, handing the forms physically, or you go back to the ballot box and start counting those papers afresh. And that is what matters at the end of the day. Because when you, I asked this on Saturday when we were here, if you went, Mr. Kitawa, if you went to cast your vote, and this returning officer fails to transmit the results as he's supposed to transmit electronically, for example, or he fails to sign Form 34A, does that mean that you did not cast your vote? You see, that's what matters. Do not disenfranchise people or voters and take away their right as a right in the Constitution merely because there was human error or because there was a failure of technology. So long as your own right or your own vote has been taken on board, that is what matters, and that is where you have to go back and say, Mr. Gitoga, are we able to trace his vote? Yes, we can. What do we do? Here we are, agents. We agree. Let's go back to the ballot box. Let us now go and recount those. So long as you do not invalidate your vote, so long as we do not invalidate your vote, that is all what matters.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Mukhwana, what is wrong with having, because this is not saying that manual is the only thing that's going to be used. In the event that the electronic system does not work, in the event there is manipulation in the electronic system, like has been claimed so far, if you went into the server and found, okay, there was 10,000 entries which are not explainable, and possibly they may have affected the final result. What is wrong with going back to that vote that was cast by Wanjiko and counting it manually?
Thanks, Michael. You know, Michael, I agree with Ambrose to a certain extent, and I also agree with him when he says that the voter should not be disenfranchised. But what Wakili is not saying is the wider exposure that this vote has been exposed to. If you look at the Elections Act, particularly Section 44, with the use of technology, there was an intention of the legislators that this electronic transmission of results or electronic management of the election generally would be a progressive thing. So that when we started on the 8th of 8th, in the next subsequent elections, it will be a progressive management using electronics. Now, let me come to this. You know, what Wakili is saying is actually what could have been applied on the 8th of 8th, in that at that time, both electronic and manual appear to work concurrently, without necessarily giving supremacy to either or. What has happened in these proposed amendments is that electronic transmission is really cosmetic. The way it is couched in the legislator's language, it is cosmetic. Why is it cosmetic? It is cosmetic because, number one, they say that both will be transmitted manually and electronically. But they go ahead and say that once that is transmitted, should there be any conflict, it is the manual that carries the day. Number two, these results that are being transmitted, let's not use the word transmitted when you're dealing with manual, because you don't transmit a manual result. You ferry a manual result. Now, when this result is being ferried, in what form is this result being ferried? The law has opened up space there. It says that whatever form that is used, if it is found that the form that was prescribed has not been used, that will not invalidate. And that's what Ambrose is saying by saying that the way that place has been opened, it leaves room for any form. Believe you me, even plucking from an exercise book and signing will do. But again, they put a caveat there, which is debatable, that as long as it is not calculated to mislead, we'll do exactly what Ambrose is saying, that you go to court, but people will already be fighting. So that really opens it up. The ultimate and the best option would have been a situation where both the manual and the electronic are working concurrently with equal strength, so that where the manual fails, the electronic does, and vice versa. You know, my brother is saying that you can go back to the vote and count. You may not find it there. It will be in the sugarcane plantations. It happened. Just a moment, let me finish this. But when it comes to electronic, where servers are securely configured and preserved, we are told by the IT experts that there are some trails that cannot and will not be deleted. So looking at the purpose of technology, that tells you that, yes, even technology can be tampered with. But on the balance of probability, you are better off as a nation having both systems working concurrently, because where the electronic fail, you go the other way, and vice versa. In electronic, and that's why, for example, there was this cry about servers. We are told that in the servers, even if you delete everything, it will indicate if somebody else accessed that particular gadget. So
Mr.
for me,
Katundu.
it's all to have in mind.
2 points, Michael.
And as you answer that, as you answer that,
Yes.
the electronic has an advantage, just like Dr. Mukwana has articulated, in the sense that as much as you, as Gatundu, may get into the server and the system, we are able to follow that up. Yes. With manual, if you went into a bush somewhere and stuffed a ballot box or emptied it, whichever, that trace can actually get lost just like that.
No, there's one thing that Dr. Mukwana is not disclosing. Let me disclose this. We don't have one form. We have several forms that are filled. And they are carbon copies, and they are given to the agent. So all the agents, in this respect, we have only 2 presidential candidates. So we shall be having at least 2 extra copies. There is the original one, that will be fed to the constituency returning office, and then there's another that will be from there. It will be fed to the National Tallying Center. Then these 2 carbon copies will be given to the agents at both tiers. That is at the polling station and also at the constituency level, where the Form 34B will be generated. So you cannot go as a returning officer and cook your own figures, because there is evidence of what actually happened through these carbon copies. So that is not an issue for me. If for example, NASA have their own copies, the agents have their own copies, even if the returning officer comes up with another fictitious copy, it will be easy to verify. And that's why the process of verification is very important, from the registration of voters all the way to the court. Verification is a continuous process, as Honorable Joki said in her minority judgment. The other important aspect, and this one should also come out clearly, is that the text, you remember those texts that were being sent from the kit, they have been removed, to the best of my understanding. The agreement that has been put in place with the providers is that there will be no transmission of results through text messages from the kit, because those were the ones that were bringing problems and were confusing the members of the public. And no one could explain what we are seeing on the screen, what are they? And remember, one of the advocates of the IEBC said, these are just statistics. So those we do not want to see them. And remember, the amendments have gone a notch higher. They have said, no results shall be released and declared before all the forms 34As and 34Bs have been received. That takes care of the complaints that were being made by NASA. That takes care of what the judgment, the majority judgment, was able to bring out. So for me, I am very comfortable. This issue of staffing ballot boxes in the bush, I mean, you have to have faith in your own, in your own systems and processes. Remember, security is one of the aspects or policies that has to be imbued into our electoral systems. Yes, it is one of the. Yes.
Weda, is it that we don't have faith in our people to a point where now we have to act in a way that like we're not having human beings? Because let's face it, even with the electronic system,
yes,
it is run by human beings.
Yes.
Our issue may not necessarily be the system.
Yes.
It is the people that run the system.
The Bible says faith without works is dead. We had faith in 2007. We butchered each other. Then it triggered off certain steps that we take to secure this country. Those are the steps that we are saying, let us not go back. I am saying, I am in Jubilee and I would like us to go for the election and win. But we do not want that victory to be challenged or taken. If you are talking about forms, the only form recognized is the one presented by the returning officer, not the one by agents. So that if there's a problem in Ichaweri, you don't wait for the agents to come and compare. You get it? Secondly, the transmission did not fail. Leave alone what the majority Supreme Court decision said. The transmission did not fail. What they allowed NASA to enter into was, they said, we want to get into the server. Suppose we had taken an approach where you say, transmit the forms and transmit the results and compare the two, the forms and what is in the server. So that if we are going to have an amendment that is good for this country, it's an amendment which says we are going to get it right 100%. If there's a problem with the forms, we are going to compare it with the server, and we take a decision from both. We are not saying we are leaving this. If there's a problem with the transmission, let us take this form. Then other people will say, this form has been doctored. When there is a problem with the transmission, we'll say, votes have been increased. We advance by saying, if there is a problem, we will halt that one, compare the two, bring the documentation, and if it is necessary, even recount the votes before we announce. Because now, presidential elections is a dangerous.
What happens in a case where the two are conflicting? The manual and the electronic or the transmitted do not tally.
Recount the votes.
So we've got
presidential election.
Isn't that
no. The process of voting and counting is manual. How you resolve that dispute is recounting the vote. That's why we are complaining that the Supreme Court should have ordered a recount. They should not have nullified the elections. So if you are amending to correct, then we don't bury the same thing we are complaining about. We say, in case in the future, a polling station where my brother comes from, there is a conflict between the form and the transmission. You say, before you announce, bring those ballot boxes here, we count, we look at the counterfoil, then we take again. Why? Presidential election is a matter of life and death. People have died, and therefore we have to get it right.
In fact, the amendments actually take care of his concern. What the amendments now are proposing to do is this. First, you do not invalidate votes merely because there is failure of transmission or merely because there is failure by the officer concerned to sign the form. You don't invalidate. That option no longer exists. Secondly, if you want to invalidate a presidential election in Kenya, you must first and foremost do a recount. And for me, when you do a recount, you do not even need to invalidate. Because what means, if I go back to the ballot box, and I find that Raila got 90,000 and Uhuru got 100,000. And there was a discrepancy in the transmission or in the forms. What do? You will go to the 90,000 Raila got and 100,000 that Uhuru got, and that will be the result. That is what these amendments are doing. And that is, to the best of my knowledge and estimation, that is the best method to use.
I think allow me. That is misleading, my brother, my younger brother. The amendments are saying where there's a conflict between the form and the transmission.
The forms become clear.
Yes, and this is what I'm saying. I am a member, and I said this is wrong. Our team should not lead us to where we are go back and fight. Please.
That one is there. Those are two amendments that you are confusing. Those are two separate amendments. There is an amendment.
And that is the one I was saying is bad.
Can I finish?
Please.
The first amendment is that where there is a conflict between manual and transmission, manual shall carry the day. That is the first amendment. The second amendment is that you do not invalidate, as a court of law, you do not invalidate a result merely because there is a problem with the transmission or merely because the form was not signed. What you do is that you go back and recount. You go back and open.
All right, yes. All right. Allow me to bring in Dr. Mukwana before we take a few calls. But Dr. Mukwana, there seems to be a disagreement amongst, council.
Amongst Jubilee council.
How is the public going to get full understanding?
Thanks, Michael. That is when I got in, I was carrying a bunch of documents, and my brother asked me, why you bring documents this? So I told him, look, because our viewers have to get the best. The reason is we don't want to interpret and not go back to the law. Ambrose is right on this one. It is what Wakili is saying here is not there. It's not there, with the greatest respect. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but the truth is not there. The ideal situation, Michael, is a process that minimizes as much as possible unchecked human intervention. That must be the writing principle, unchecked human intervention. So that if you look at the requirements as they were, or as they are now before the amendments come in, NASA, Jubilee must have their agents, correct? The votes are being counted, the tally is done, the verification is done at the polling center, and they all sign. At that point, it is manual in the sense that it's being counted manually and voted manually. However, when the results are now finally being filled in, both sides have their agents.
Right.
Okay? They sign. If they refuse, that's another issue. and the officers are required to indicate the reasons for refusal. Then at that point, when NASA and the Jubilee, so that they do not take us through this again, at that time, the result is filled in the system. That's what he's saying, text. And that manual form is scanned. Minimum human intervention. Once it is transmitted directly to the NTC, minimum human intervention, at that point, believe you me, there is no loss of trail. And that is why, as Kenyans, we still wonder why IEBC has refused to open that server, because there is a trail. But when you say, now, even that has gone to the NTC will not matter in case there is a failure. And remember, Michael, this failure thing is not explained, it's not described. What are the reasons that will amount to a failure? It could be a refusal, it could be a negligence, it could be incompetence. But now when you say that, look, if the transmitted result is in conflict with the manually ferried result to the CTC, and then from Turkana to Bomas of Kenya, that is what will work. Look at the exposure that these ballot materials have to. The minimum unchecked, the unchecked human intervention is huge,
It's
Michael.
huge.
It's
Allow
huge.
me to pause you right there, because I want us now to bring in Michelle, who is going to let us know what Kenyans are saying and whether we are actually making it better for them or more confusing. Michelle.
Well, lots of comments coming in on social media, especially with regard to this conversation. Just a moment, but let's take a few calls coming in this morning. We have Joseph calling in from Nairobi. Joseph, good morning. To your question or comment, please.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Go ahead.
Now, I want to talk to your panelists, and I want Mr. Mukwana to let the country understand how does hello?
Yes.
Go ahead. We can hear you.
I want Mukwana to let the country understand how does the voter of Wanjiku count after Wanjiku was voted? Is it just the voting independent of counting? Is it independent of transmission? And if it is not, how does the narrative come about that we should be able to go back to the ballot, and yet both transmission and counting, they are intertwined? There is no way you are going to separate the two.
All right, Joseph. Thank you for that question. We'll be addressing that in just a moment. That's Joseph from Nairobi. Let's also hear from Pius, who is calling in from Kisumu. Pius, good morning. To your question or comment, please.
Yes, what I was commenting.
Yes.
I was commenting on Mr. Weber's argument. Because when you are going to the polling station, before you fill the form, you are being identified electronically. You put your finger, your thumbprint, and you're identified. Your name comes out from the screen. So what I was asking, after being identified electronically, where does that record go? Because that's what they are saying people vote manually. It's not manually. You are being identified electronically.
Right.
Then, when you are being identified, where does that record go? Because for us to avoid this stuffing of the ballot paper on the box, why don't they have been identified at the polling station? Their records remain so that we know 20 people voted. So we look for 20 ballot boxes with paper instead of saying to go and count the ballot box on the box.
All right. All right.
That's what we are saying. That they are not telling us that, because people, when you immediately enter to the polling station, you are identified electronically.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Before you pick the ballot boxes, the ballot papers, you are identified.
Yes.
So these people say, after you have voted, because that's where the people say some ballot papers are being stuffed on the boxes. Why don't they, where you are being identified, why don't we know that in the polling station, 300 people came and voted? We check on that machine, tell us how many, and the rest, which are the excessive ballot boxes, we ignore them.
All right, we'll be addressing that in just a moment. Many thanks for your question. That is Pius calling in from Kisumu. Let's also hear from Tebia calling in from Kilifi. Tebia, your question or comment, very briefly, please.
Okay.
Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning. My question is, Jubilee said they won the election. And they were told to open the server. And this is what Maraga said. And I into this that Maraga did not do anything wrong by nullifying the election. The worst thing that he said, we should go back to elections because Jubilee said that they won the election and they did not want to open the server. So my question is, if they open the election, why they are refusing to open the server? They should not bring this Kenya got violence as 2007.
All right. All right. Very many thanks. That is Tebia calling in from Kilifi there, bringing in the question of the servers once again. Let's also hear from Kichenche calling in from Mombasa. Kichenche, good morning. Your question or comment, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? I just wanted to make a comment. You see, Kenya is so beautiful. We all love this country, right? This is our country, right? Yes. And everybody that speaks, especially from the Jubilee side, it's like they're creating this law as it's for them only. Kenya, there's no Jubilee, there's no NASA, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no them. Kenya is one. It's only one country. We have laws that we created in 2010 that's supposed to guide us. And these laws are supposed to touch on every Kenyan, in particular group or another. Those laws are made to streamline on how we live as Kenyans together in harmony. So when certain party, certain group, or certain people from the country want to change the laws for their interests, this is really dangerous time for our country.
All right.
I am a young man growing up. Here I am today. What about my children tomorrow? They have to think about those things as politicians. It's not just about us here today. Let's think about our children and our children's children. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Many thanks for your comment. That is Kichenche calling in from Mombasa. And finally, in Migori, Nelson calling in. Nelson, good morning. Your question or comment, please.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Hello?
Nelson, if you could kindly reduce the volume of your television set before we speak.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, Nelson, we can hear you. Kindly go ahead.
I'm getting you.
Please reduce your television set volume.
I've reduced it.
All right, well, go ahead.
What I'm saying, I agree with what Mutai Ngunyi is saying.
Go ahead.
I'm saying...
We can hear you, Nelson. Kindly go ahead.
I'm saying...
Yes.
That I agree with what Mutai Ngunyi is saying. That when you are dealing with a politician, don't listen to what a politician is saying. Listen to what a politician is not saying, because that is what is true. Now, on the side of this Form 34A, 34B, and others, you know, during transmission, both the text and the image of the form could be sent. But it's very funny that the text was received, but the form remained. This means there was something wrong somewhere, or somebody played a game somewhere. And also, if you look at these changes which are being brought, the amendments, these amendments, if you look at them just the way some people were saying, like weather, you know, the way they are being brought is very cheeky. Like, look at the chairman. Now, what's wrong with the chairman? Maybe the chairman has not, the chairman is not there, the vice will take place. Is there a scenario where the chairman has failed to announce the results? It means somebody is suggesting that the chairman may fail to announce the results this time, so we take an option. What I'm saying, what the politician is saying, is not the thing that is mean. Is not the thing that he meant. So what the politician is saying, we should only believe what is not saying, the one which is true.
All right.
Both NASA and Jubilee are actually telling the country, they're taking the country to a different direction. So me, what I think, Kenyans would be very curious with these people, because what the politicians are saying, actually what they mean is what not they are saying.
All right.
That's the only comment I can say.
All right. Many thanks.
Before you disconnect me, you know, when we're talking about the voter right, we have the majority and the minority. Both of them have the right. But, you know, we only capitalize on the majority. We ignore the minority. Otherwise, thank you. I want to get leave for somewhere. I've been waiting for you and me.
All right. Asante Sana Nelson calling in from Migori. Many thanks for calling in this morning. We'll be addressing those questions when we come back. Let me also take something on social media, but we'll come back with the Joseph's question from Nairobi first. Joseph asking, how does Wanjiku's vote count at the ballot? Is that vote independent from the transmission? And we'll be addressing that question that was directed to Dr. Alutalala Mukwana. But on social media here, this is Ojola from Kisumu says, no, these laws will bring chaos and more problems in our country. Imai David has a problem with the Form 34Bs, saying a law that forces presiding officers to sign Form 34Bs regardless of whether they are manipulated is a problem. Bernard Wandera says, as they legitimize rigging, the shoe will one day be on the other foot and no one will be allowed to whine then. Ask Karua about defending evil. Marlon Marua says, it's evident that even the Jubilee panelists cannot agree on the proposed amendments. That shows clearly how suspicious this law is. One here says, weather has finally seen the light. Amen. But Boniface Kingnaro says, the proposed laws will cure the problems pointed out by the Supreme Court of Kenya for the country to have a credible poll. We'll continue reading through these comments here. We have one saying, the problem is that the laws were the people incompatible with the Constitution and the democracy, bringing Moi's era through the back door. So a lot of mixed reactions really concerning these laws. Most importantly, one here says maybe it's important for the media to try and demystify what these laws mean. That's exactly what we're doing on The Way It Is this morning. So let's take a short commercial break. At this point, we'd like to release our viewers watching us on KTN Home. Life and Style is coming up next. But The Way It Is continues exclusively on KTN News in just a moment.
This is KTN News.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
KTN News.
Welcome back to The Way It Is on Morning Express. We're asking you this morning, are you confident or do you feel that the proposed election amendment laws proposed by Jubilee will restore credibility to the country's election process? It is a conversation we're having this morning on The Way It Is. There's a question, are you convinced that the proposed changes to the electoral law will restore credibility to the election process? On social media, Moha from Wajiri says, let democracy be given the space. Why halt a system that has already been refurbished? We also have Gitungati here saying that if Raila stops this election bill, he must be powerful than Mudhaki. But one more here says we have enough robust electoral reforms, especially the already amended 2016 Act. So whose interest is it now to amend these new laws? Hamid Sheikh says we have experience of agents being intimidated or influenced, especially by the incumbent. The secured way is electronic. And one here asks, if these laws go through, how do we ensure that there's proper identification of voters even after they voted? So do keep the thoughts and comments coming in. But earlier on, we heard from you through phone calls. And Joseph from Nairobi addressed his question to Dr. Alutalala Mukwana here in studio, asking, how does Wanjiku's vote count? After casting that vote in the ballot, is it independent from the transmission? So let me throw that question to Dr. Alutalala Mukwana. How does that work if these laws actually go through?
Thank you. If these laws go through, then it's dicey, because I have already said that from the polling center, if we are going to go the way the amendments are being proposed, then it is so open. It could go either way, and it's open to abuse. I hope I've answered the viewer. With your permission, Michael, since the crux of this debate seems to anchor on the transmission of the results, allow me to read this section, Section 39, which is on the determination and declaration of the results.
And this is on the amendments that are proposed?
Yes, it's on the amendments. What the existing law is now says that for presidential election, the Commission shall electronically transmit in the prescribed form, and that prescribed form therefore becomes mandatory, tabulated results from the polling center to the CTC and to the NTC. Tally and verify the results at the NTC. I want you to highlight that. That previously, the results had to be verified at the National Tallying Center, not at the CTC. That means, therefore, that the results as transmitted from the polling center will have very little human interference at the local level until the National Tallying Center. Remembering that in the KI decision, the results as declared at the polling center ought to be final. So that way, the viewer ought to be convinced that as long as they are transmitted at the same time, text and the scanned copy, there is minimum human intervention. Not 100%. What is being proposed now? Transmit electronically and manually. So the law seems to be saying that both will be done at the same time. I said you can't transmit manually, you ferry manually. And that's where the exposure comes in any form or format. So there is no prescription. These are my own words, because there is a rider that where there is no prescribed form used or there is a variation, that need not validate the results. So that means in this new law, the transmission manually and electronically may be in any format. And the published results should be published online portal. What is the demand for online portal helping us? Nothing. Because again, there's a rider saying that whatever will be on the online portal will not matter as far as the final result is declared. So this gives cosmetic comfort to the voter.
All right.
No,
just a moment.
There was very brief, because
we're also running out of time, so we really need to wrap our thoughts and bring it to a close.
There was that caller who asked, does the voter, the Wajiko's vote count? I think that was the question, if I got it right. This is what the proposed amendment 1E says. Any failure to transmit or publish the election results in an electronic format shall not invalidate the result as announced and declared by the respective presiding and returning officers at the polling station at the constituency tallying center, respectively. You see, now that takes care of that. It means you went and cast your vote. That vote shall not be voided by mere failure of transmission, whether it was intentional or otherwise, but your vote shall still count. And that's why I'm still insisting. If you look at the way these amendments have been crafted, and of course they are subject to further amendments on the floor, even at committee stages, and even right now at the public participation stage, which we are in, is that we may be forced to, if there is any problem of transmission, to go backwards to the form, and then even backwards to the ballot box. That is my understanding of the holistic interpretation of the effect of making sure that your vote is not voided by mere fact that there is a problem of transmission. Yes, that is what the net effect of that.
But my transmission, he seems to be isolating transmission to mean just electronic. Failure could be on both sides. That's what has to be clear. That there could be failure on the manual ferrying, and there could be failure on electronic transmission. As Ambrose said, the ideal scenario should have been that neither replaces the other. That would make a lot of sense, that they checkmate each other.
Okay. Let's now look at the fact that this is coming to the public scrutiny. Yes. And maybe, Ambrose, whether you can inform and let the public know what is their participation in this particular exercise. I believe that is meant to be taking place.
Let me clarify. Thank you. Two things. I had a caller wondering why votes, they identified electronically. How comes we say it is manual? As we stand today, the machines are used for purposes of identification whether or not you are a registered voter, and it ends there. Once it says you are a registered voter, it ends there. It does not count because it does not know whether you are going to vote for President Uhuru or Raila Odinga or which governor and so on and so forth. One day we will reach where you go and put your hand and you tap. The way when you go to a bank today and you want to check your balances or deposit cash, you walk in there, you press, and then you press what you want and you are given a number. We will reach there, but we have not reached there. That is one. Two, the Wanjiku's vote counts when it is cast, and it is cast manually. But it develops a problem if there's manipulation along the process of transmitting it. So that what is in the polling station is not what reaches the national level. So the people should know that what brought us to the arguments we have today were claims that the results transmitted were altered in the server. Whether or not that is true, that was not clarified by the Supreme Court. Then now amendments come. These amendments are now saying if you transmit and there are discrepancies or apparent or alleged, then the manual one prevails. Now that presents a problem because that was the problem in 2007 when some results allegedly from Tharaka Nithi were purported to have been inflated, and then people started fighting. So we brought in this raft of laws to say we will never have such a situation. We want the manual plus the electronic. And we should grow by saying when we have a conflict, we isolate where the conflict is, because we'll never have conflict everywhere. Where we have a conflict, we go down to Wanjiku's vote in the ballot. There is something, that amendment which I can tell you is the worst of it, where they say that the Supreme Court will not nullify elections without recounting the votes. Now, that would have looked very beautiful and very good. But constitutionally, the Supreme Court has original unlimited jurisdiction over presidential election. What that means is that they can make any order. What therefore that means is that if you enact a law that purports to limit, vary, or regulate that power, it becomes unconstitutional. So even if it is passed today, I see a constitutional court staying it and then striking it out. Then we will continue fighting. We think the judiciary is fighting. This is why I'm saying some of these things where we are even as Jubilee lawyers, we must think accurately, protect the president so that it doesn't look bad, so that when his victory comes, which is going to come, then it doesn't, nobody that comes and says he stole. The other one is, this will provide fodder for NASA to say we are not going for elections. If NASA does not go for elections, and there are 6 million people out there making noise and shouting, we will not comfortably have a country. So let us look at the country in a wholesome manner, in a way that builds us.
Bonagatundu,
yes,
I know you want to respond to that as you put your wrapping thoughts in that as well.
Yes. I totally disagree with him on that aspect because this is not something new. Even in other elections, the other 5 elections, recount is one of the most powerful tools that is used by a court of law to decide or as to who has won, especially where the issue is figures. When the issue is figures, you do not just void the election just like that. A recount is one of the aspects all that is even pleaded. Recount, scrutiny, and recount. So it's not something that is new. Secondly, I do not think that particular amendment does in any way limit the powers of the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court is being told, please, before you avoid this election, presidential election, please go back to Michael's vote. Go and try to trace it. So you are tracing the vote backwards from the portal, back to the form. From the form, you go back to the ballot box. You open that ballot box. We are able to get your vote. From there, if the court is not convinced, then it can void the elections. But upon referencing your vote. Now, on the other issue that he talked about, on what the results are being transmitted, what are they? This is what the 1F says, the amendment. The Commission shall, to facilitate public information, establish a mechanism for the live streaming of results as announced at polling stations. And the results so streamed shall be for the purposes of public information only, and shall not be the basis for a declaration by the Commission. That is very important. And because there was a complaint, what are these things that we are seeing? Remember, what we are seeing on the screen were actually text messages that had been sent by the presiding officers after keying in the results. They were not necessarily basis or based on the forms. The forms were then scanned later. And these forms were not, you could not see the results from the forms on the screen. What you are seeing were the keying in of in form of text messages. That I'm made to understand that currently that has been removed. The text message aspect has been removed. Has been removed. Yes.
All right, Dr. Mukwana, as we get closer to winding up, on a scale of 1 to 10, these laws, and you know the thing is the law cuts both ways. And some laws are good today, may not be good tomorrow. Your conclusion or your closing comments on whether these laws are for posterity, whether they help us as a country, and where they place us.
Thanks, Michael. These laws, frankly, they help in the immediate term. For posterity, there is a huge problem. I have spent adequate time to peruse the entire proposed amendments. And my brother Weda here seems to be alluding to an amendment that checks the powers of the Supreme Court to make certain orders. I said in the beginning that there was a first version of the proposed amendment bill, which had other proposed amendments. But the one that we later got seems to have only this. I really hope that there is not another version of a proposed amendment somewhere else. So I'm not able to react very well to what he has said. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the best and 1 is the worst, I think for posterity, we are scoring badly. I think 8 out of 10 is not for posterity. There is a law, there is a principle in law that you must not legislate and apply the law retrospectively. I do not know whether the courts will interpret this attempt by the parliamentarians to apply this law now to be falling against that requirement. That I leave to the courts. 2, if we are going to these elections with the proposed new laws, I can assure you, and Ambrose is right on this one, the NASA side is not going to vote. Because we seem to have given the NASA side a lot of fodder. And I'll be frank to say, somebody in the Jubilee side, and I hope it's not these lawyers, is misadvising the president. Or he's inserting provisions that actually fly in the face of what the president wants. When you're going for election, this is the wrong provision to include in an amendment, and it doesn't augur well for the country. Finally, we must always remember that whether you are NAS or Jubilee, after 26th, we ought to live together. And it is wrong to pass a legislation with a view of fixing an immediate term. President Uhuru has only 5 years if he comes back. President William Ruto has 10 years, up to 2032, if they rule up to 2032, as I've said. After that, somebody else will. So let's have legislation for posterity. We have been there. We've burned this country. We should not dare do anything that will take us back there.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there because of time. That's Dr. Alutolala Mukhwana with us. We also have Alex Gatundo and Ambrose Weda, who are all lawyers. And hopefully that does give you an idea, but maybe something that we've left out that needs to be clear. And I'll ask you, Mr. Gatundo, the public participation, what are they required to do?
You are supposed to you are supposed to write. The best form is or format is to write a memorandum of for or against the specific portions or the entire amendment as proposed. Yes. Okay. So you just write a memorandum to them and then you specify this.
What you agree with.
And up to 5th. Yes, it's up to 5th of October.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And well, at 16 minutes after 8, we're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. Morning Express carries on, and this morning we still have Sports Chat coming up right here, so do stay with us.